The 1980s was a strange time for the American car industry. It was a decade defined by synthesized music, terrible hairstyles, and cars that were mostly shaped like bricks. The golden age of muscle cars was long gone, killed off by high gas prices and strict pollution laws. If you walked into a dealership in 1985, you were likely to find rows of slow, boring economy cars that struggled to get out of their own way. The V8 engines that used to roar were now choking on smog equipment, producing less power than a modern blender. To the average person, it looked like the era of performance was dead and buried. But if you looked closer, past the plastic bumpers and the digital dashboards, there was a secret war going on. Engineers and rebels inside the big car companies were tired of driving slow cars. They couldn't build the loud, flashy muscle cars of the past, so they built something else. They built sleepers. These were cars that looked like boring family sedans or cheap hatchbacks on the outside, but hid serious performance hardware underneath. They were designed to blend in with traffic, right up until the light turned green. These are the 9 most insane American sleepers of the 1980s. The cars that proved you didn't need a hood scoop to go fast. We begin with one of the weirdest experiments in Ford history. In the mid-80s, Ford decided they wanted to bring some European flavor to American roads. They took the Ford Sierra, a popular car in Europe, and brought it over under a new brand name, Merkur. The model was called the XR4Ti. The name sounded like a robot from a science fiction movie, and frankly, the car looked a bit like a spaceship too. It had a strange double-wing spoiler on the back and a shape that was unlike anything else in Detroit. Under the hood, this strange machine packed a punch. It used a turbocharged 2.3-liter 4-cylinder engine. This was the same family of engines used in the Mustang SVO. Tuned to produce about 175 horsepower, it was surprisingly quick. With a 5-speed manual transmission, it could sprint from 0 to 60 miles per hour in around 7.6 seconds. In a time when most cars took 10 seconds or more, the Merkur was a rocket. It handled corners with a sharpness that American cars usually lacked. Sadly, the high price and the confusing name meant it didn't sell well, but for those who knew, it was a hidden gem. If you want to talk about a car that looked like a shoebox but ran like a cheetah, you have to talk about the Dodge Omni. The standard Omni was a cheap, slow economy car designed to get you to the grocery store and nowhere else. But then, the legendary Carroll Shelby got his hands on it. He created the GLH, which stood for Goes Like Hell. But in 1986, he took it a step further with the GLHS. The S stood for Some More. Shelby modified only 500 of these little monsters. He fitted them with a 2.2-liter Turbo 2 engine. This upgraded heart featured an intercooler, a larger throttle body, and a special intake manifold. The result was 175 horsepower in a car that weighed almost nothing. The GLHS could hit 60 miles per hour in just 6.5 seconds. That is fast today, but in 1986, it was mind-bending. It could embarrass Ferraris and Porsches at stoplights, leaving them wondering how they just got beaten by a square hatchback. Carroll Shelby was not done playing with family cars. In 1987, he turned his attention to the Dodge Lancer, a sensible 4-door sedan made for middle managers. Shelby looked at it and decided it needed to be a race car. This wasn't just a sticker package with some racing stripes. Shelby went full mad scientist on the suspension and brakes, turning the soft sedan into a corner carving machine. Under the hood, he boosted the turbocharged 2.2-liter engine to produce 175 horsepower and 175 pound-feet of torque. It might not sound like a lot now, but back then, it was enough to launch this family hauler to 60 miles per hour in 7.2 seconds. It was quick enough to hang with Mustangs and Camaros while carrying 3 passengers in the back. Inside, it featured special leather seats and a high-end stereo. With only 800 built, seeing one today is rarer than spotting a supercar. In 1986, Chevrolet decided that America needed a mid-size sedan with some European attitude. They took the Chevrolet Celebrity, possibly the most boring car name in history, and created the Eurosport VR. This was essentially a family car that had gone to the gym. It featured a full-body kit, bold red accents, and blacked-out trim that made it look much meaner than it actually was. It rode on white rally-style wheels that grabbed your attention immediately. Under the hood, buyers got a 2.8-liter V6 engine making 125 horsepower. While a 0 to 60 time of 9 seconds doesn't sound fast, the VR was all about the attitude and the handling. It was technically a package installed by dealers, not the factory, which makes every single one slightly different. Finding a real Eurosport VR today is like finding a unicorn. It represents a time when Chevy was trying desperately to make the family sedan cool again. By 1989, the partnership between Chrysler and Carroll Shelby was coming to an end, but they had one last trick up their sleeve. The CSX was based on the Dodge Shadow, another forgettable economy car. But the VNT model was special. It was the first production car to use a variable nozzle turbocharger. This was groundbreaking technology. Most turbos suffered from lag, meaning you had to wait for the power to kick in. The variable nozzle design adjusted the airflow inside the turbo to eliminate that weight. The engine produced 175 horsepower and a massive 205 pound-feet of torque. It delivered smooth, instant power that felt much bigger than its 2.2-liter size. Only 500 were made, and they came with a certificate of authenticity signed by Shelby himself. It was a high-tech goodbye letter from one of the greatest names in racing. Shelby didn't just stick to front-wheel drive cars. In 1989, he remembered that Americans loved trucks and V8s. He took the mid-size Dodge Dakota pickup and performed a heart transplant. He ripped out the standard V6 engine and stuffed in a 5.2-liter V8. This was the first rear-wheel drive vehicle Shelby had worked on in years. The big V8 delivered 175 horsepower and 270 pound-feet of torque. While an 8.7-second sprint to 60 doesn't break records, in 1989, it made this the fastest pickup truck you could buy. It paved the way for the performance trucks that would become popular in the 90s. With unique wheels and special trim, it was a work truck that knew how to have fun on the weekends. Usually when you think of Lincoln, you think of soft, floating luxury barges driven by retirees. But the Mark VII LSC was different. LSC stood for Luxury Sport Coupe, and for once, the name was accurate. This car was built on the same frame as the Ford Mustang, and it shared the Mustang's heart. Under that long, elegant hood sat the legendary 5.0-liter high-output V8. Rated at 225 horsepower, it gave this luxury coupe serious muscle. It could hit 60 miles per hour in 8 seconds flat. But unlike the Mustang, the Lincoln did it with class. It had air suspension that smoothed out the bumps and four-wheel disc brakes with anti-lock technology. Inside, you were surrounded by leather and wood, but when you stepped on the gas, it growled like a muscle car. It was the perfect car for the executive who was secretly a hot rodder. In the late 80s, the Ford Taurus was the best-selling car in America. It was everywhere, usually driven by moms taking kids to soccer practice. It was the definition of a boring daily driver. But then, Ford did something crazy. They took this family sedan and gave it a heart transplant from a Japanese race engine builder. The Taurus SHO, or Super High Output, featured a 3.0-liter V6 engine built by Yamaha. This engine was a masterpiece, revving all the way to 7,000 revolutions per minute and cranking out 220 horsepower. That was more power than a Mustang GT had at the time. To make it even wilder, Ford only sold it with a 5-speed manual transmission. It could rip from 0 to 60 in 7 seconds. Owners of BMWs and Camaros were constantly shocked when this plain-looking sedan blew past them on the highway. Finally, we look at a legend that technically wore a Ford badge but had a European soul. The Sierra Sapphire RS Cosworth looked like the most boring four-door sedan imaginable. It was a plain box that you wouldn't look at twice in a parking lot. But under that plain suit was a race car engine. At its heart sat a 2-liter turbocharged engine tuned by the racing geniuses at Cosworth. It pumped out around 201 horsepower. That power went to the rear wheels through a 5-speed manual gearbox. This boring sedan could hit 60 miles per hour in just 5.8 seconds. That is blazing fast even by today's standards. It had race-tuned suspension and brakes that could handle a track day. It was the ultimate hooligan car disguised as a commuter, proving that you should never judge a book by its cover. The 1980s might have been a dark time for traditional muscle cars, but these 9 machines proved that the spirit of performance never truly died. It just went undercover. These cars were not about showing off with chrome and loud paint jobs. They were about the element of surprise. They were about the joy of pulling up next to a sports car in a 4-door sedan or a hatchback and leaving them in the dust. They taught us that you don't need a massive engine to have fun. Sometimes, all you need is a turbocharger and some clever engineering. Today, these cars are rare collectibles, reminding us of a time when speed was a secret. So, which of these 80s legends would you choose? The high-tech Taurus or the raw Dodge Omni? Let me know in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe for more stories about the cars that refuse to be boring